The instant I spotted a group of women dressed in pastel outfits popping champagne bottles in the middle of my hayfield, I knew this day was going to push my patience to its absolute limit. There they were, a clique of HOA elites sprawled across my property as if they owned it, complete with wicker picnic baskets, silk blankets, and a violinist sawing away at some lofty tune that had no business near a cow pasture. At the heart of it all, presiding like royalty, was Margaret, the HOA's self-proclaimed overseer of suburban perfection. This was the same woman who'd once tried to fine me for parking my own tractor in my driveway. I inhaled deeply, counted to 10, then realized counting wasn't going to cut it. I revved up my ATV, dust swirling in my wake, and pulled up just shy of their absurd setup. Margaret peered over her oversized sunglasses with a dramatic sigh, as if I were the one intruding. "Oh, Jack, don't give me that look," she said, waving a manicured hand at the scene. "It's just a small get-together. We needed a spot with a rustic vibe for our luxury picnic experience, and your hayfield is ideal." I stared at her, then at the chaos: fancy charcuterie boards, imported French cheeses, and what looked like a department store's worth of decorative pillows. A few of the women sipped their wine, smiling at me like I was the hired help. One even clinked her glass and chirped, "Oh, you must try the brie. It's heavenly." I gritted my teeth. "This is private property," I said, slow and deliberate, like I was teaching a kid not to stick forks in outlets. "You didn't ask, you didn't pay, and you sure don't belong here." Margaret let out a theatrical huff, the kind only someone with too much cash and too little sense could muster. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Jack. It's just a field. Nothing's getting hurt." I glanced at the flattened hay, the soil gouged by high heels, and a half-eaten platter of pâté teetering near my irrigation line. "No harm," she'd said. That's what people like Margaret always thought, never having to sweat for something only to watch it get trampled. One of the women nudged Margaret and giggled, whispering not so quietly, "He's kinda cute when he's mad." Margaret smirked. "Jack, sweetie, I know you're one of those guys who think land is some sacred thing, but don't be ridiculous. We'll be gone in a couple hours. Just act like we're not here." That was it. The sheer gall of this woman snapped something in me. I climbed off my ATV, arms crossed. "You might want to pack up, Margaret," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I'm serious." She rolled her eyes so hard I thought she'd strained something. "Jack, be reasonable. You wouldn't actually kick out a bunch of ladies, would you?" I gave her a slow, knowing smile. "Oh, I wouldn't dream of it," I replied. "But you might want to leave before something else joins your picnic." She scoffed. "Oh, please, what, a few cows? Maybe a goat." I turned toward the paddock where my two biggest, most territorial bulls, Hank and Brutus, were lazily watching the spectacle. They weren't mean, exactly, but they loved checking out new things with their horns and about 1,000 pounds of muscle. Margaret must have caught my glance because her smug look faltered for a split second. "Jack," she said, her tone sharpening, "tell me you're kidding." I didn't answer. I just strolled toward the gate, whistling casually. Behind me, I heard the violin stop mid-note and the rustle of silk as the women shifted uneasily. "Jack," Margaret called again, her voice tight. "Don't you dare." I flipped the latch. The sharp click was the sweetest sound I'd heard all day. The second that gate swung open, the vibe of Margaret's luxury picnic flipped. The polite chatter dissolved into the thudding of hooves as Hank and Brutus trotted toward the unexpected feast. They weren't hostile, just big, curious, and not used to seeing silk tablecloths flapping in their field. The violinist reacted first, his bow slipping as he let out a choked gasp. One woman gave a shaky laugh, still clinging to the idea that this was part of the rustic charm, until Hank plowed his head into a cheese board, scattering fancy cheeses everywhere. Margaret leapt up, clutching her designer hat. "Jack," she screeched, her voice hitting a pitch that could have shattered glass. "Get those beasts away from us." Brutus zeroed in on a champagne bucket, sniffing it before giving it a nudge. The bucket tipped, and a bottle rolled straight into Margaret's lap. She barely had time to yelp before Hank, eager for more, charged at the picnic setup with surprising gusto. The table flipped, glasses shattered, and Rose splashed across the pristine blankets. Chaos erupted. One woman tried to salvage the food, but Brutus lunged, mistaking her move for an offer. She shrieked and flung a wheel of brie skyward, It landed on another guest's head like a sad crown as she wailed. Someone else tripped over a wine glass while trying to save the violin, tumbling into a bowl of gourmet olives. Margaret stood frozen, arms outstretched as if she could stop the disaster with sheer willpower. That delusion crumbled when Hank nudged her shoulder, sending her stumbling back. The uneven ground tipped her lounge chair, and she rolled into a pile of crushed crackers and mashed fruit. The rest of the group ditched all decorum. Heels were abandoned, hats flew off, and pastries were trampled as they bolted. The violinist grabbed his instrument for one last stand, but Brutus snorted, and he sprinted off, dress shoes and all. I leaned back, arms crossed, watching the pandemonium unfold with a satisfaction I hadn't felt in ages. They'd strutted onto my land, treated it like their playground, ignored my warnings. Now they were paying for it in ruined dresses and broken glass. I'd given them a chance to leave peacefully, but Margaret, true to form, wouldn't listen. She finally staggered to her feet, her pristine outfit now a mess of dirt, wine stains, and what might have been pricey pâté smeared on her sleeve. Her hair, once flawless, had haze sticking out at odd angles. She stormed toward me, fury blazing, oblivious to her state. "You," she bellowed, jabbing a trembling finger. "This is outrageous. Do you know how much money you've cost us?" I tilted my head, pretending to mull it over. "Well," I said, "judging by the wreckage, I'd guess a few grand in glassware and wasted wine. But hey, bright side, you wanted rustic." She made a sound halfway between a snarl and a sob. "You think this is funny?" I nodded. "Hilarious, actually." She opened her mouth for another tirade, but Brutus took a shine to her flowing dress. He sniffed, then chomped the hem and tugged. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then the rip of fabric tore through the air. Margaret shrieked, flailing to free herself, but Brutus thought it was playtime. Another tug sent her stumbling, the dress tearing further. She finally yanked free, diving out of reach, then wheeled on me, eyes blazing with venom. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I'll make you pay for every second of this." I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "You trespassed. I just introduced my bulls to their new guests. Didn't think they'd share their field." Panting, red-faced, and livid, Margaret let out a guttural scream before stomping off. Her crew, looking like survivors of a tornado, scrambled after her, dragging their ruined picnic gear. The violinist, now missing a shoe and clearly rethinking his career, gave me a feeble nod before limping away. I watched them vanish toward their posh neighborhood, leaving my field strewn with flipped tables, crushed berries, and a few forgotten purses. Hank and Brutus munched contentedly on the leftovers, unbothered. I sighed, pulled out my phone, and snapped a photo. This was a moment worth keeping. Margaret could have cut her losses and slunk away, but that wasn't her way. She didn't just want apologies, she wanted compensation for her own foolishness. So it was no shock when she marched up my driveway the next morning, handbag swinging like a weapon. Her sleeve still bore a faint rose stain, and she limped slightly from the prior day's chaos. I sipped my coffee and waited. "You're paying for this," she snapped, pointing at me like I was a naughty kid. "I hope you've got a good lawyer, Jack, because you unleashed wild animals on innocent women." I leaned on my porch railing, cool as ever. "You mean my bulls? The ones who live here? On the land you trespassed on?" Her face twitched, lips thinning. "Don't twist this. You knew what you were doing. You set them loose on purpose." I nodded. "Sure did." Her grip tightened on her bag, nostrils flaring. "So you admit it?" "Yep." I took another sip. "And I've got it all on video." That stopped her. She hesitated, eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and showed her the footage, crystal clear, from my arrival to Brutus gnawing her dress. Every absurd second, every scream, every trespass, in high def. Her jaw dropped, then snapped shut. "You can't use that," she barked. "That's an invasion of privacy." I chuckled. "On my own land." "Nice try." She stood there, chest heaving, scrambling for a new angle. I could see the disbelief in her eyes, that someone like me, a mere farmer in her view, could outmaneuver her. But Margaret was stubborn. She lifted her chin. "I'll take this to the HOA," she said, crossing her arms. "They'll fine you for creating a hazard near our community." I shook my head. "Your HOA has no say over my land. You know that. But go ahead, bring it up. Maybe they'd like the video too. Her confidence flickered. Margaret lived for control, but she had none here. She'd strutted onto my property, got what she deserved, and now faced the fallout. What she didn't know was the real damage was already done. While she'd been storming my porch, the internet had shredded her reputation. By the time she retreated, muttering about baseless lawsuits, my phone was buzzing. The video had exploded online overnight. People nationwide were cackling at the entitled HOA lady who'd invaded a farmer's land and paid in spilled wine and tattered pride. Comments were brutal. Most satisfying thing ever. Trespasses, then mad when he doesn't roll out the welcome mat. Bulls are the MVPs. Local news jumped on it. Then a national station ran a segment with slow-mo of Margaret fleeing Brutus, clutching her shredded dress. She was furious. By week's end, she was the poster child for HOA horror stories. People unearthed her past absurdities, like finding someone for too bright flowers or banning garden gnomes. Her name became a byword for petty tyranny. Then the HOA, mortified by the PR mess, ousted her as president. A neighbor filmed her storming out of the meeting, fuming as others whispered. It was poetic. She sent me a cease and desist letter to pull the video, but it was too late. The internet owned it now. I didn't hear from her after that. Rumor was she tried to sell her house, but no one wanted to buy from the crazy bull lady. For me, life rolled on. The hayfield bounced back, the bulls savored their feast, and I got more peace than I'd had in years. Occasionally, someone at the feed store would shake my hand, thanking me for standing up to the Margarets of the world. I never thought losing a couple bulls would make me a folk hero, but if it kept HOA busybodies off my land, I'd take the win. My property was mine again, the bulls were happy, and Margaret's downfall became a warning to anyone dumb enough to cross a farmer's line.